Hello, how are you? Thanks for being with me tonight. My name is Michael King and I'm a plein air and studio painter. Tonight I'm going to be painting some swatches that I need for an article that I'm writing for the International Artist magazine, and it covers the importance of color temperature shifting within the same value for your painting. And why you want to do this is it creates a lot more interest within the area of the painting, no matter where it is. So it could be in the grasses, you do some color temperature shifting and it creates a lot more sparkle, vibrancy, just something that it adds a life to an area that you don't necessarily have to add detail to, and it's a fantastic way to paint. So for reference, I'm going to be using this color, and you can think of it as a skin tone. I will be doing two others tonight, also a violet and a kind of a medium green. And so I want to put the base color here. Now, a good thing to note though is this first color, whatever it may be called, doesn't have a temperature per se. There's nothing to compare it to, so we don't know if it's warm or cool. So this can be considered, I guess, neutral in a sense. And I have two swatches here because I'm going to be doing shifting with different pigments. So here, top, I'm going to be cooling with ultramarine blue. Although globally blue is a cool color. If you compare ultramarine blue to cerulean, then ultramarine blue is a warm blue. But in this instance, we're going to use it to cool this color. Down here, we're going to use Viridian to cool. Up here, we're going to use Hansa Yellow to warm. And down here, we're going to use Cad Red Medium to warm. And you'll get to see the difference on, that they make to the color itself. And this is important in understanding if you want something, a temperature shift that is chromatic or more vibrant, or you want a temperature shift that is more gray. So you have to use different colors in accordance to this. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab some of this color and we're going to cool with ultramarine blue. And one thing I didn't do is put up a double white. Because as we add the blue, we're going to do two stages, cool, cooler. And as we add the blue, since ultramarine blue is darker than this value, it's going to darken it as well. So to maintain the value, we need to add some white. And luckily white cools as well. So this will be our first stage. Get that color in there. And the thing about color is if you think in temperatures more than you do color, you'll have a much easier process of mixing. So we can see that now the initial color that I put down is actually warm and this one's cool. And the only reason this is warm is because we put a cool down. Had we put a warm down, this color would have been cool. And that's the important thing to realize. And we've all heard it, right? Color temperature is all relative. But for some reason, for a lot of us, our brain doesn't really register what that means. Right? So now we're going to take this color here. And yes, I know these are the same value. Because if you squint a little, this edge here disappears. So I know those two are the same value. Open your eyes and you can see the definition of the line between. But if you squint, it all blends together. So throw in a little more ultramarine blue here, get it even cooler, but of course it darkens. So we'll add some white. Luckily white cools, but we know that I could probably use a little bit more white. I already put a little bit of blue in there. We'll do a test. Just for emphasis sake, we'll put a little more blue in there so you can really see the difference. But that darkened it up, so I gotta lighten it. So that's the important part. You gotta keep it the same value, or as close to the same value as possible. That's how you get the vibrancy, that's how you get the sparkling effect. Alright, so this is good. So this article is to be in there, I think, January, February magazine. I think their magazine right now is all digital. My current article, which is just an inspirational piece about going out and doing plein air, comes out in the December issue, November-December issue, which is the end of October. All right, so here we are. So now, if we isolate just this value here, right, this is warm, this is cool. So this color that we initially had cool because of this warmth is now actually warm because of this cool. So it's 100% relative. So cool, warm, warmest. Warm, cool, coolest. Okay. And that's enough for that side of it. We're going to go down here and we're going to cool with Viridian, and you'll actually see what happens. Let's get a nice pile of paint, get some Viridian. Viridian isn't a strong color, so I'll add quite a bit. Do a test, value test. I think we have to add a little bit of white. Maybe we'll do a test on here. Yeah, same value. So we'll fill in this color here. This swatch. And those values are pretty much exactly the same, oddly. They melt together so well. Even with the eyes open. So you can see how it cools differently. This color is cooler than this, but oddly this color is warmer than that. So in this next step, we'll add more Viridian. Probably a tiny bit of white. Do a test for value. It's a bit dark, maybe a little more white. You know, you try to get as close as you can. I'm not going for perfection, but so cooling with Viridian for skin tones, I find is really amazing, because you have your generally the chin and the below the lips area, the jawline. Those usually get cooled with Viridian. You got to be careful you don't go too far, otherwise it's going to look like whiskers, and for women that doesn't really work that well. All right. So there we go. So this color, the last one is the coolest. This is warm, but this is warmest. This is warm, this is cool, this is coolest. Oddly, this swatch here, when you compare it to this, I would say it has a warmth to it. So it's all relative, and it solely depends on the pigments you use. So next swatch, we're going to be warming the top one. We're going to use a Hansa Yellow Medium. And this skin tone, for just so you know, it isn't out of the tube. Never buy a skin tone out of the tube. It's comprised of a lot of yellow ochre, some cad red, some ultramarine blue, transparent red oxide, and white. I love using yellow ochre for a base for skin tones, and you need to add quite a bit of cad red to bring up the temperature, but I find it makes a wonderful skin tone. There's 100 different ways to make skin tones. That's just how I do it. So we're going to add some Hansa Yellow. This yellow, I wonder if it's pretty much the same temperature. This yellow here is pretty much the same, value as this mix already, so I don't really need to do anything to adjust it, which is nice. So I'll go in and paint this swatch. Now all of a sudden, that warm swatch is now becoming cool. And in the article that I'm writing, I'm going to show a variety of paintings, just not my own. I'm going to show some from friends I paint with, because they paint amazing paintings and they're amazing references. So you get to see that and see how they implement temperature shifting within the same value, as well as how I do it as well. So that's just Hansa Yellow. So now this swatch is the warmest. This is cool. This is cooler. This is coolest. But now we're going to warm it up even more. Luckily, it's the same value, so I can just add a ton more Hansa Yellow in here. And you can see how warm it's getting, or how yellow, I guess, it's getting. Generally, I say I don't think in color. I only think in color when I'm explaining things like this. Like I'll add yellow, I'll say yellow. But when I'm thinking about mixing colors, it's all about what temperature this I'm going to be using. Do I want a temperature in the yellow range, or do I want a temperature in the red range? And sometimes I want a temperature in the red range because it'll help kill my chroma. It all depends what you're going to be doing. It really is important to understand your pigments that you use. And not just their names, but the pigment number on the back. CAD reds are generally safe. Hansa yellows are generally safe. Ultramarine blues are generally safe. Like all the staple colors are really good. But as soon as you get into the wonky colors, like say a cerulean blue hue, I mean, what's that made out of? Is it actually made out of cerulean blue and white, or is it using phthalo? So it's really important. And if it has phthalo in it, then you got to understand how phthalo shifts. So understanding your pigments, I find, is really important to color mixing, as well as just relying on mixing via temperature. So now we have a very warm skin tone, you could say. A cooler one, more coolest. So this initial color that used to be warm is now the third in line. And it's all, like I say, it's all relative, but seeing it being relative and saying the words relative is a whole different ballgame. So take this mixture and we're going to add CAD red, and we'll see the huge difference this makes. Right, so potentially someone might have a skin tone more like this. I see this as more of a yellowy ochre. I don't know how it's showing up on the screen or not. But so I'll add some CAD red. The red might be probably a little darker. So I'll add some white, not a lot. We're all looking for the same value. There we are. And again, you can see it's the same value because you can just squint at the line that it creates between them. And that line melts in between the two. So this whole row, when you squint, you should just see a gradation from warm to cool. There are no set lines, and vice versa here. Alright, so you can really see how that brings out. It might be really good for like some rosy cheeks in the shadow. So I'm going to add a little more CAD red. And I know I'm going to have to add a little bit of white because the CAD red is darker than my mixture. The white will cool it, but the CAD red makes up for it. Okay, I think that's it. We'll do a test. That edge. Generally, that's pretty good. If you're off one or two half dits on your value shifts, on your value, you're fine. As long as it isn't starkly different, then it's not really shifting temperature and values anymore. It's just placing an entirely new value down, which is an entirely different premise. So maybe this is good for the lips and shadow or something, right? A really nice, rich red skin tone. So, pretty easy. So now the neutral flesh tone that we have is now pretty cool. This is the warmest, cooler, and coolest. It almost goes the whole gamut from a red to a green, where you compare with warming with Hansa yellow and cooling with ultramarine blue. Now you get to a more of a yellowy ochre to, I don't know, if you were to isolate that, I might say that's a warm gray, but you can really see the difference there. Clean my brush. All right, so next I'm going to reset to do a violet color. Just give me a second. Excellent. So this time this is a violet. You can use violets in a lot of things, say a shadow in landscape, potentially a shadow in and a portrait as well. Heck, it could be in the water. There's a lot of different areas that we could put this. This violet is made with ultramarine blue and permanent alizarin crimson, and that's the most vibrant blue I can actually mix on my palette. You know, I could add a diazoxine purple, but I'd prefer not to add another color to my palette. So this is the best violet I can mix on my palette. This has a little bit of white in it so we can actually see it. Otherwise it'd be pretty much black. This top row will be warmed with Hansa yellow, which predictably will probably gray it down. So it'll lose some of its violet nature as we warm it. But that's fine because it'll just look like it's warmer. When in context of a painting, it won't lose so much chroma. It'll just look like a warm violet, even though we know yellow reduces the chroma of violet. And for the bottom, we'll be warming it with cad red, and we will be cooling with ultramarine blue. The same blue that I used to mix it. So it should be substantially different from the cerulean blue that I'm using. And this is cerulean blue. It's not a blue hue, it's actually cerulean. Usually cerulean hues are phthalo and white. But that's fine, as long as you know what you're using. So I'll take a bit of paint, and we will cool it with cerulean. Cerulean is not really a strong color, so I'll probably have quite a bit. It's not a strong pigment, I mean. Usually you have to add quite a bit to get a mix. And the value probably hasn't changed much. No, predictably not. Because the value of the cerulean is pretty much the same value as this violet that I have. So bonus, I don't have to do any more work. And as we lay this in, excellent. So now we have a cooler violet and we have a warmer violet. Whereas before we just had violet. And I'll throw the rest of this cerulean in. And again, the value doesn't change because bang on, the cerulean is the same value as this mixture. That wasn't planned, it just kind of happened. But it generally works that way when you're working with darker colors. The next one's more of a light green, so you'll be able to see the more adjustments that I'll need to make. So, beautiful. Now we have a really cool violet. We have a warmer violet, and we have the warmest violet until we proceed through. So my next section will move down below just so we can see how ultramarine blue cools it in comparison. Now ultramarine blue is darker than my mixture, so I may have to lighten. So we'll see how this affects it. Value test. The value pretty much stayed the same there. Got lucky. Now, what you notice, or what you should notice, I see it in real life, but on the video, maybe not. This violet is more saturated than this violet because I use the same ultramarine blue that I used to mix it compared to the cerulean blue, which is a kind of a green blue. So this is going to reduce the chroma slightly, whereas this maintains the chroma. And next I'll add another good chunk of ultramarine blue to it. And I can see that's darkened quite a bit, so I am going to have to add some white. And luckily white cools. So we're good. And what I'm doing up here, I'm just comparing the values on my palette instead of on the sheet. So when I go to do it, I can tell that they're the same value. This ability, just to be able to mix colors the same value, is so important. And it's something everyone should train at. Spend a month mixing colors and trying to match their values. And go to the hardware store, big box store, pick up a bunch of paint swatches, anything, doesn't matter what color they are. Just make sure they're different values. Go home, use a set palette, and just try to mix any color, but the same value as that color chip. You know, a great exercise, because when it comes down to painting, you'll be able to mix any value you want instantly because of this practice. So, swatch down. We have the coolest violet here, slightly warmer, and the warmest in this batch. However, you can see, I think you can see a little bit here. This actually, this chroma, the saturation is a lot higher than here. This is a little more gray blue. This is more vibrant violet blue, but darker. I mean, not darker, but cooler. So we'll take another swatch of violet. This time we're gonna warm with Hansa Yellow, medium. Hansa Yellow is great. Especially Hansa Yellow medium for me. It replaces like a lemon yellow and a cadmium yellow medium, something warm, right? I find Hansa Yellow medium is a really good, cool, warm kind of pigment, and it just means one less pile of paint on my palette, which I like. So do a test. Yeah, value probably wouldn't have changed much at all, just because of the nature of the Hansa Yellow. Didn't really get darker, but you can see it's warmer, but it's really killed the chroma a lot. Right? Warmer, cooler. Yeah, no, clean my brush for no reason. Throw in a little bit more. Test out the value. Yeah, that's good. Scoop it up. You know, and this is gonna warm differently from the red. And if I use the permanent alizarin crimson, the one that I used to mix this with, as the warming agent, it would maintain a lot of saturation, because that's what I initially mixed it with. However, I'm going to warm this section with Cad Red medium. Just to show you that choices are important. Here we go. So, warm, cool, cooler, cooler, coolest. Notice how much more chroma I have in here, because I used the blue is a little more compatible than it is the yellow. We know yellow is going to instantly kill that saturation. Here we are going to use Cad Red. Cad Red's pretty much the same value, but we will test it to make sure. Yeah, not bad. Make sure it's mixed so there's no streaks in it. Yep. So using a Cad Red somewhat keeps the saturation, especially when you compare it to the top, because that yellow really killed that chroma. And I use chroma and saturation hand in hand with each other, because they're exactly the same thing. So if you hear someone talk about chroma, they're talking about saturation, and vice versa. There we go. So this is a warm violet, cooler, coolest, coolerest. Right, but big difference now. This has a little more saturation than this here, which is expected, because the yellow is going to kill it a lot more than the red will. And we'll move into more Cad Red. Do a test. I mean, the value is probably not going to shift, no, just because the red is, Cad Red medium is kind of the same value as the violet already. Score. Like I said, not intended though. There we are. So we can tell all these values are the same because we can squint, and it just looks like a gradation. Kind of looks like a a green gradation to a violet gradation, which is very interesting. I would still consider these violets just because I know they started from a base of a violet. And here you can see it is a really warm violet, and proceeds down to a really cool violet. And it's substantially different compared to the pigments we use. And those pigments we use are going to be based on what kind of chroma we want. Do we want to kill the saturation, or do we want to increase the saturation? If I really wanted to increase the saturation, I would use the alizarin, which I used to mix the original violet. But the cad red medium still does a job, but it does kill it a little bit. If we were to just keep this, let's see, give a shadow in there, but if we can just hide this, right, you can still see that it kills the chroma, but not as much as the top, so it looks more vibrant. So color is more relative than we think, right? All right, so that's it with those swatches. My next ones are going to be kind of a minty green, a little lighter than wasabi, because I want to throw in a light color there. So let me reset here. So far this article for the magazine is becoming quite long. I have to do quite a bit of editing. But that's good. Shouldn't be a problem getting it in though. Alright, there's my swatch. Here's my palette paper. And this is just the gray colored palette paper you can buy at art stores. Nothing substantial. I work on everything from neutral gray to white to wood. My preference though is neutral gray, because then you have an automatic reference to what number 5 value is. Alright, let's get those pigments on there. So this is the green, like bubblegum. Bubblegum had a green color to it. And we're going to cool this green with cerulean blue. And we're going to warm it with Hansa yellow. I mean, that's the only yellow I have, so that's the way it's going to be. If you have different yellows, you can always try that. If you have any cad yellow mediums or cad yellows, you can always try that. And I'm going to cool it with ultramarine blue. You're thinking, well, why are you cooling it with a warm blue? Well, the intent is to show that cooling with a warm blue should actually reduce the chroma, make it less saturated, and give you a more specific mixture. And we're going to warm it with cad red, which should do the same. It should kill that green color, or the green chroma. Alright, clean the brush. And we will mix this green into this middle area. Man, that's a nice color. It's a nice non-temperatured green. Now globally, green is considered cool on the global color wheel, but we will change that. We'll make it warmer as soon as we add cool to it, and we'll make it cooler as soon as we add warmth to it. So think of this as like a good base for some bushes or something. Then you got to go in and add some cools and warms to it to make it more interesting. There you go. And I'll show you a quick example of some temperature shifting here. So this is a painting that I did plein air, and you can see in here where I have some yellows. I have 2 different yellows in there. One's a cooler, one's a warmer, and then I even have a red, a light warm red, and a cooler darker red. And it gives a little more sense of interest within the light that's cascading on the ground by the ferns there. Alright, so we're going to cool the top mixture first, and we're going to cool it with cerulean blue. Cerulean blue is a little more greener, so we should see it maintain some of its chroma. Oh yeah, I got to put white on the palette. There we go. Cerulean blue doesn't really tint that much. It's not a powerful pigment, and you know, I'm using true cerulean blue pigment here, but I've switched to cerulean blue hue because this stuff costs so much. It's like $45 for Canadian for a 37 millimeter tube, and it doesn't even have a strong strength to it that I couldn't afford it anymore. So I had to move to cerulean blue hue, and it works great, and it's not as expensive by far. You're talking like 12 bucks compared to what I say, 47, something like that. It's crazy. So cerulean blue, although cerulean blue makes great skies. So does cerulean blue hue though. Even better, I would say, because it's made with phthalo and it keeps its saturation more when you mix white. That's why knowing your pigments is so important. You got to understand how to use them. Excellent. So that worked out great. So you now have a warm green, and now you have a cool green. We'll throw in more cerulean blue. That's probably darkened it too much. Here, there's actually, even when you squint, there's a slight line. So I could have done better on those values, but they're really close, so I'll leave that be. I will have to add white for this next mix, as it got a little bit too dark. And even when you're painting, whenever you're mixing, do a test. See if that's the value you want. See if that's the temperature you want. Screw the color. You know it's green. It's green-ish. Shifting the temperature is more important than the actual color itself. Everything has a color. We know it has a color, but you don't have to mix that exact color. You mix it close enough, and then you shift the temperature within it. No one's going to know. Look at the Impressionists. You can't tell me every painting Monet did, those are exactly the same colors as the water lilies that were in the water at the time. There's no way. All right, excellent. So now we have quite a cool green, a warmer green, and the warmest green in the batch. Fill it in there. Excellent. Now we're going to cool the next green, the bottom row, with ultramarine blue, which is quite darker in value. So chances are we will have to add white just to bring it up. And luckily enough, white cools. Nice. Squint, much better value match here than here. This is slightly darker, but not much. Sometimes when you shift temperature, having a slight value difference is good. It gives a little more sense of light. But generally, mixing in the color temperatures within the same value has its benefits, huge benefits. So now we have a cool green compared to a warm green. Actually, you can potentially see that, and these greens are very similar in temperature, even though I made one with ultra and one with cerulean. And now we shall darken it some more. I darkened it too much, need to add some white. Nice. So this is kind of an extreme, but we got into the blues, but you can argue it's a cool green. And we shall fill in that square. Excellent. So now we have the coolest green, a warmer green, and the warmest green. Let me clean my brush. Excellent. Now we're going to take the bit of green, next bit of green, and we are going to warm it with Hansa yellow. Now, I made this mixture with Viridian green and Hansa yellow. So the Hansa yellow will maintain its chroma. And these two are pretty much the same value. Yep. So as I progress adding the Hansa yellow, I don't really have to adjust with, say, adding more Viridian or something to darken it. Those values are very, very close. Excellent. So now we have really warm, the warmest green, and now this warm green is now cool. So really, it's all depends on where you start and where you end. A little more Hansa yellow. Don't have to worry about the value. I'm pretty sure. Nope. Excellent. This live stream will go out public on YouTube after the article is released, but it'll be available for my Patreon subscribers until, well, forever, even after I release it to the public. So Hansa yellow, very vibrant green, warmest that we have made so far, and the warm green before that is now cool, more cool, cooler, coolest. And now we get to see the wonders of warming with cad red medium. And I think by now you understand what's going to happen. You know, green and red are complementary, so it's not going to look like Christmas. It is going to kill the saturation. A little bit of cad red goes a long way. Don't need that a lot. Yeah, I think we could say that it darkened it a bit. Yeah, so we're going to have to add some white. Unfortunately, that cools, but hopefully there's enough cad red in there to make a difference. Still too dark. Value is most important, without a doubt. Without value, you don't have anything. Otherwise, it's just black, right? Matching values is the key to everything. Still too dark. And then temperature is next in my books. Value and temperature, that's all you need. It makes color mixing so much easier. It makes painting so much easier. Everything's easier with thinking in temperature. Let's put this in. Yeah, that's good. Took a while to get there. But the important part is I took my time and I got there. I didn't force it. I didn't just throw it on and try to correct it afterwards. Right? I didn't fill in the whole square, then realize the value is wrong and I gotta scrape it off or try to fill it in and put paint on paint. There we go. So when you squint, looks like I caught myself in a lie unintentionally. I thought the value was good. Let's just try to fix it. That's a little bit better, but all right. So that's a warm green. This is saturated green. Cool, cooler, coolest. So let's throw in a little bit of red. So although we're, well, that's probably a bit too much. Let's go extreme. Let's not. I got to make sure that you can still see that it is part of the family. Put that in there. Squint. It's close. A little bit of white. All right. Now I would argue this is a warm green, and you're going to say, well, no, it's a neutral gray green, and you know this is more warm than this. But for this exercise, that's not the argument. This is, I'm warming this green with the red. The results are, it's a warmer green, but it's highly unsaturated. Right? Whereas we used Hansa yellow up here, you get a warmer green, but it's highly saturated. And that's the difference between someone who's just starting out painting and someone who knows what they're doing. It's just making sure you understand how your pigments work in the situation you have. So let's say I'm doing a nice green, beautiful field, and I throw in some cool greens, and maybe that's warm green, but I'm looking for some unsaturated warms in the same value. So I'll mix in my red to kill the chroma of the green, so I can put it in the shadows or in the mid-tones of the grasses, and it creates a whole sense of depth. But I've done nothing. All I've done is shifted the temperature, kept the value the same, and added it to the painting. and it makes a huge difference. And you really see this in the article that I'm going to be putting out. It'll make more sense after you read the article and come back to this video. All right, at this point, these are all the swatches I wanted to get done. I see no one's asked any questions. That's great. That's fine. So I just want to say thank you for making your way through this video. If you've read if this is the future and you've read the article and you've watched this video, if you have any questions, of course, just hop onto my website and go to the contact me area and shoot me an email with any questions you have. I'll be more than happy to help you. Take care, everyone. Cheers.